Well, welcome everyone. On behalf of the Southeast Iowa Sierra Club and the Sustainable Living Coalition, we'd like to welcome everyone to the Forum for the Future of Fairfield. Thank you to our speakers from across the state of Iowa, those in the audience, and those joining us by Zoom. We'd also like to acknowledge the support we received for this event from the City of Fairfield, Humanities Iowa, Fairfield Arts and Convention Center, Seven Roses Inn, Fairfield Accounting Services, Fairfield Food Collective, Aeron Community Task Force, Sierra Club's Community Action Grant Program, and Werner Elkmer Audio Visual Studio. And now I'd like to turn over the mic to the Mayor of Fairfield, Connie Boyer, who will officiate over the opening of the Forum for the Future of Fairfield. Connie.
Thanks, Bob. On behalf of the City of Fairfield, I want to welcome you all today and thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedule to be here and to listen and to learn. I want to thank our sponsors today, of course, and our speakers. Thank you for your time and your knowledge, and thank you for coming to share it with us. And thank you to Southeast Iowa Sierra Club and its members for being the driving force behind today's event. Today's forum was organized by a group of people who really care about Fairfield and this place that we call home. And they care about our future and Fairfield's ability to change with the challenges we face as a community. Being proactive is better than being reactive. So today is another step in that direction. We will hear from other Iowa community leaders and how they are solving their own community challenges, which may be similar to those that Fairfield faces. We hope to learn from them and be inspired to become a better community than we are today. As many of you know, many years ago, Fairfield completed a Go Green plan. Last year, the city approved a broader but less detailed comprehensive plan called Fairfield Forever. It is a plan to be used as a living document, and I saw that living document being used in a planning and zoning meeting this week. So I was really happy about that because we used it as a reference to talk about a current zoning change and a future zoning issue. Some of those items include energy efficiency and long life cycle construction methods as part of infrastructure replacement and improvements, providing an efficient, safe, and connected pedestrian and bike network, infill development of existing properties and vacant lots, supporting and promoting sustainable development practices by having higher density housing in some areas, community gardens, and some smaller homes, preserving important ecological areas in our community, exploring ideas that would provide lower cost and renewable energy to our citizens, preserve our significant tree cover, and promote additional plantings of 1 tree per household per year. And if you don't know what tree to plant, my husband is voting on pine trees, so just plant a pine tree and you make him very happy. Additional recycling, including a business recycling program. Electric car plug-ins. Currently, we are in the process of installing 2 new ones in the downtown area. Once those are installed, we will have a suggested amount of plug-ins for our community of our size, at least for now. Water conservation efforts. Encourage and develop more permeable pavement areas. These are broad visions and statements, and certainly not everything. These were inspired through a community-based process. Going forward, we will need more detailed plans to carry out these broader statements. The city will lead on some things. Private citizens and teams may also lead on some of these initiatives. If you wish to work on a project, please contact the revived Volunteer Center at the library, or certainly you can call me. They are developing a database of projects and a database of volunteers to complete projects to help volunteer action teams implement plans and goals. The City of Fairfield has also agreed to partnership to hire a sustainability coordinator. This is a significant step in creating a baseline for our community, the important task of monitoring our progress, and helping lead on initiatives. Over the next 10 years, we will be a more sustainable community and a resilient community than we are today, with significant progress to help our residents and lower energy costs and more efficiency and safety nets to help those most in need. We will be a community of planners and doers to meet the needs of change. We will be a more caring community. We will have a greater sense of pride of place in our homes and our businesses, and we will work more and more together as a cooperative team of local citizens. So let's get started right now. Thank you for all your practical actions to build our town and our community as a healthy, sustainable, happy place to live and share our life together as the family of Fairfield. Thank you.
Okay, so just to provide you with a little background on the Forum for the Future of Fairfield, in 2008-2009, Connie and I co-chaired the executive committee formed to develop the Go Green plan for Fairfield. Although we achieved great success in the early years of implementation of the plan, it expired in 2020. And there is no better time than now to rethink our future. This effort has already been spearheaded by the Southeast Iowa Sierra Club, who has set the direction for Fairfield with their new Strategic Conservation and Community Resilience Plan. And they have worked hard to engage the broader community in rethinking our future as a collective effort. So as you listen to our speakers today, can you envision what a vibrant, sustainable, and resilient community might look like? Many communities around Iowa are already living that future. So join us in gathering ideas and learning from these communities who are already living a sustainable and resilient future and reaping the benefits. A special note today is that the forum is being co-hosted by students from the Maharshi School and Fairfield High School. Since it is their future we'll be talking about, they too are committed to us getting it right. The four students on my right will be introducing our guest speakers. So, Gitika.
Hi, my name is Gitika Adhikari, and I am in the 11th grade at Fairfield High School. I'm here because as a young person, I've experienced all this chaos in the past couple of years, and I'm also learning how to grow and become who I truly want to be. As teens, as many of you in the audience, we are not bench warmers in this crazy game of life. And if we want to form a better future, we need to start by thinking about what we want to do in the present. The best way to make changes is to talk and to listen. So today, I'm proud to present Josh Mandelbaum as a senior attorney with the Environmental Law and Policy Center, and he holds a seat on the Des Moines City Council. John chaired the council's energy task force and championed the city's energy benchmarking ordinance and the addition of electric vehicles to the city's fleet. Josh also worked with advocates to pass the city's 24/7, 100% clean energy standard, a leading policy nationwide for city clean energy standards. Josh has also helped ensure that the city's first master transportation plan was adopted and has emphasized corridor development, sidewalks, and complete streets. I could go on listing Josh's many civic contributions, but would like to turn the platform directly over to him. Thank you, Josh, for being with us here today.
Well, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. And it's my pleasure to be here today and talk about some of the things that we've done in Des Moines and things that I'm proud of. One of the things about experiences like this is we learn from each other, and no city, no community is doing everything. We all have a significant amount of work left to do. And bringing folks together to talk about solutions, to talk about how we do this work is incredibly important. So I'm very grateful that everyone here is a part of that, and happy to share some of what we've been up to in Des Moines. Let me share my screen real quick. And should see the PowerPoint now. So I wanted to start by providing a little bit of context about why we should engage and why we should do this. I've been on the Des Moines City Council. This is my 4th year, and we've effectively had 3 different climate-related challenges or disasters in my short period of time on the council. We're living the impacts that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report says is coming. And what we've experienced is only going to get more frequent and more severe. So in June of 2018, when I was new on council, we had severe flash flooding. We got the amount of rain in about 6 hours that you typically get in the wettest month and a half of the year. We got that amount of rain in 6 hours, and our infrastructure, our community can't handle that. We had water in places that we'd never experienced it. Homes were devastated. People's lives were interrupted. It was incredibly impactful and eye-opening for someone on the council that you're on the front lines of climate change and you can't avoid it. Everyone in Iowa knows about the derecho from last summer. Again, another one of those events. There were parts of Des Moines, even though we weren't hit nearly as bad as other communities in our state, there were parts of Des Moines that were without power for almost a week. And then this summer, you see the convergence of the climate crisis and the state's water quality crisis coming together with severe drought that is threatening our water supply in new and different ways. And all of these type of events are what we're going to experience more and more of if we don't get climate change under control and if we don't act. So we're going to, as a city, we're going to deal with it one way or the other. And it's much better to deal with it proactively and work towards solutions than simply react to the awful consequences. And we've made commitments in the past, and we need to deliver on those commitments, but we need to also make sure our commitments live up to the future, that we are looking at what is happening and we are responding and acting based on the best science and the best data that is available. And we also know that, as a community as the capital city, as the biggest city and the largest metro area in the community, people look to cities like Des Moines to lead and to be the first on a number of different issues. And so we need to lead by example. We need to be at the forefront of all of this. And in that context, that's where our climate action comes into play. And in some respects, we're leading. In other respects, I think we're a little behind. So one thing, we still don't have a comprehensive climate action plan. We are now working on it for the first time, but we don't have that. And so one of the things that I've tried to do while I've been on council is to fill in the policy gaps that we know are going to be a piece of a comprehensive climate action plan. And a big part of that is where these recent goals in our January policy came from. Our 24/7, 100% carbon-free electricity standard by 2035. We know that any comprehensive climate action plan needs to tackle electricity, which in the US has traditionally been our largest source of emissions. As we've been adding renewable energy, the transportation sector recently overtook the electricity sector, but any plan has got to address the electricity piece. We also revamped our emission reduction targets, and we based those. We had previously adopted targets that were in line with the Paris Climate Agreement. But then the 2018 Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report came out, and we knew we needed more aggressive targets based on the science. And so we adopted emission reduction targets that were in line with the latest science and recommendations of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's report. But I'm going to focus a little bit more on our 24/7, 100% clean electricity standard. So one of the things that we know is a lot of communities already have what they call 100% clean electricity standards. And that is a really good step. But what Des Moines is doing is designed to be a step beyond that. And I think the rationale or the reason behind that is pretty clear if you look at, for example, what our utility is already doing. So Mid-American Energy, if you were at the state fair, they have what they call their 100% renewable vision. And that's like a lot of communities, 100% clean electricity standards. You can meet that with what's called renewable energy credits, where you take the environmental attribute of clean energy and you essentially set aside that attribute on behalf of a community. Well, Mid-American is one of the largest coal producers and polluters in the country. They've got 5 coal plants that they're the majority owner and operator of, and a 6th plant that they're the majority owner, but that is operated by Alliant Energy. So they're one of the largest carbon polluters in the state of Iowa, one of the largest coal fleets in the country, and they could meet their 100% renewable vision by retiring renewable energy credits without retiring a single one of those coal plants. So it's great that they've built a lot of wind generation, that they are a leader, but part of what you need to do is you need to build that renewable generation and displace that fossil generation. And a 100% standard without more isn't going to get you there. And so the idea behind our 24/7 is that we're not just looking at renewable energy credits, we're looking at the energy that is produced at every hour of the day. And the load that is serving the entire city of Des Moines, all our businesses, all our residents, and ensuring that that is clean, carbon-free energy 100% of the time, every hour of the day, every day of the year. And that is another step above and beyond what these 100% clean electricity goals have traditionally been. And we're in the position to tackle this. We're in the position to move forward and push forward in this regard because we already have a lot of wind energy on the grid. So it's taking that next step and looking at what we can do. So we passed our policy in January of this year. So we're just now starting down the path of implementation, but thinking about what it will take to actually and effectively implement this is looking at the full range of strategies on the electricity side. It's thinking about how you build better, more efficient buildings from the get-go. It's thinking about how you invest in energy efficiency and reduce energy use in your existing buildings. It's thinking about how you add renewable energy to the grid, but also in distributed ways on homes, on businesses, and integrating that everywhere. And then it's taking advantage of a number of the pieces of technology that we now have that allows us to be even more efficient with the existing resources we have. So we're going to be exploring that full range of strategies to implement this. It's also going to require pushing our utility, and we'll look at options that we have as we come up to discussions with Mid-American about our franchise agreement going forward. So all of that will play a part in what this policy looks like and in how we implement it in the coming years. Another piece that is what I call a pillar of any comprehensive climate action plan is the work that came out of our energy task force from a few years ago. And that's our energy and water conservation benchmarking ordinance. So this task force, it was convened by our mayor, Frank County. Mayoral leadership is really important on sustainability, on addressing climate, and Mayor County has consistently been a climate champion. And he appointed myself and Council Member Bill Gray to this task force with a specific goal of looking at our building energy use. Again, one of the big pieces of where we know our carbon emissions are coming from as a city. We had multiple meetings. We engaged stakeholders and we did specific outreach to the affected building owners as well. We presented the work back to the city council, the full council, in multiple work sessions. And the result was passing an energy and water benchmarking ordinance in the spring of 2019. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that means and why it's important and how I think we could improve or adapt that for more buildings and how other communities could follow along with that. So first, just from a basic perspective, benchmarking is the practice of comparing measured device, process, facility, or organization and comparing it to peers or other like buildings. The idea being that you're going to inform better performance and compare that performance to hopefully create improvements and motivate improvements. So the idea is you benchmark similar buildings and look at how they're performing. You compare an apartment building to another apartment building and of similar size and say, okay, this building is a top performer, this building is a low performer. And if you're that low performer, hopefully it motivates you to take a look and say, well, why am I a low performer? What can I do to improve my building performance? And you do that across all types of buildings. We know, and this slide's maybe a little dated in terms of the number of communities who've implemented benchmarking. But when we were looking at this, there were a little over 20 communities in the US that had implemented a benchmarking ordinance. And simply implementing benchmarking, communities were seeing a 3% decrease in energy use. When you inform folks of their energy use and that they were less efficient, it got folks taking action and improving their energy use. But another really important piece, it's not just letting folks know in that transparency piece, it's also about getting the data to make better policy decisions going forward. What additional programs, regulations, incentives might we need to get where we need to go from an efficiency and an emission reduction perspective? So the ordinance that we passed, and the task force looked at a broad range of policies and solutions. The ordinance that we passed focused on commercial multifamily buildings of 25,000 square feet or larger, and that they must annually submit energy and water benchmarking to the city by July 1st. And then starting after the first couple of years, it's just submitting that information to the city. But then that information will become public and we'll start sharing that information publicly from 2022 and beyond. The idea behind just submitting it to the city for the first couple of years. If a building owner was maybe not happy with their performance, we're going to give you a couple of years to work on that. And then folks will be able to see your performance and see that you've improved by the time the data is released publicly. The big piece of, and this goes back to the beginning, this is from our greenhouse gas inventory as a city, the first one that we did. Buildings accounted for 65% of our energy use as a city, and over half of our emissions. So that's a big reason why we were targeting this specific policy. But even more specifically, our biggest buildings and why we were focused on those buildings over 25,000 square feet. Only 1% of the buildings in Des Moines are 25,000 square feet or more, but they account for 36% of our office space and a really significant amount of our energy use. Almost 44% of all of the building energy use in the city. So by focusing on these biggest buildings first, we're having the biggest impact. And during this process, we talked about going to smaller buildings. There was an earlier draft of the ordinance that went down to 10,000 square feet. That's one of those pieces. We ultimately didn't, partly because we didn't think we had the technical resources to help our building owners navigate the process if we expanded to that many buildings from the get-go. But that highlights and is a next step of how you make a better ordinance. And it's also the type of thing where if you're a community that doesn't necessarily have buildings of the size that Des Moines does, you might start at 10,000 square feet. You might go down, but you can adopt this ordinance to your community based on building size and just doing a similar analysis in terms of which buildings are the biggest contributors to energy use and emissions use in your community. So we've got this in place. The goal is to really get these buildings thinking about what they're doing from an energy and water use and thinking about how they can do better. We've had actually pretty good compliance. You know, when I put on the screen those 20 other communities, the average compliance is around 50% in the initial few years. And we've already had over 80% of these buildings submitting their reports and their data. And anecdotally, we've heard about multiple buildings when they've seen the information, they've taken a look at it and they've started taking steps to implement efficiency measures and improve their building performance. So the hope is that we're going to continue seeing this over the course of the next couple of years. And by the time we're releasing this data publicly, we're going to see improved building performance from a number of our large buildings. A couple other things that I'm want to touch on real quick that we are talking about and that I think are next steps. You know, we're obviously updating our greenhouse gas inventory. You need to have the most recent data to be doing this well. And you also need to know if what you're doing is having the impact that you've intended. We're doing a comprehensive climate action and adaptation plan. Like I had previously mentioned, the policies that I've already talked about are going to be slotted in there, but there's a lot more that we have to do. Another piece of that, so I sort of consider the pillars, the three biggest policies. Our clean energy standard, our 24/7, 100% clean energy standard is one of those pillars. Our building benchmarking or building energy use. So building benchmarking is a key policy under that next pillar. The third pillar, which I think we're a little bit weaker on, is addressing that transportation sector. And that's really a comprehensive approach. We've started pieces of that from a city perspective with our transition of our city vehicle fleet to electric vehicles. We have we have over 700 municipal vehicles. Some of those are easy to start electrifying now. Those are our light duty vehicles. Others, we're looking at solutions that include biofuels and biodiesel. So for example, our city garbage truck fleet, which there are not any electric options right now, not at scale or at cost effectiveness, but we've partnered with Renewable Energy Group, and we're installing dual fuel technology on our garbage fleet, which will allow those vehicles to operate on 100% biodiesel. And that will reduce our emissions from those vehicles 85%, which is a significant reduction. Doesn't get us all the way there, but that's going to be a bridge to the long term. And we're going to keep looking at pieces like that. But it's also thinking about how do we actually reduce the number of vehicle trips needed. And that's everything from investing in transit to thinking about how we design our community so that there's density on corridors, that there are safe walking routes to schools and to transit stops, that we have bike infrastructure that allows people to commute via bike and to make trips via bike, not just for recreational purposes, but for daily living as well. And that was the piece where we adopted Move DSM, which is our comprehensive transportation master plan that included a complete streets policy that thinks about all of those uses. Our roads are not just about cars. Our roads need to be about pedestrians and bikers and people using transit. And you build a more accessible city and a better city and a more vibrant city when you do that, but you also incorporate sustainability. We need to think about how we do things from energy efficiency on existing buildings, but push our standards in new development. And we're doing that anytime we have city incentives. That's from abatement to tax increment financing. We've started requiring going above and beyond energy code from an efficiency perspective as a condition to just getting those incentives. And we need to push that policy farther and do more than what we're currently doing there. We're also adding renewable energy and thinking about how we add solar to municipal buildings, which it's now a standard part if we're doing any sort of new project, but we're looking at how we can go back and add solar to existing buildings. So it's all of these pieces and much more. And I think I've probably been talking about my time. I've got to run after I let you go now, but I'm happy to take questions. And I think there's a Q&A for the panel in a bit, and I'll try and make it back for that if I can. So thanks so much for having me. I'm excited that you're tackling this work. It's going to take all of us to get it done. And the more partnerships we have across communities in Iowa, the easier it's going to be for all of us to reach our goals. So thanks for what you're doing, and thanks for having me.
Thank you, Josh, for joining us remotely, and I understand you will not be staying online. It was a pleasure hearing of all of your accomplishments from both working inside and outside of the system. You have offered a lot for us to learn, from whether it was as your role as council member, an advocate, or a lawyer, and how these roles are not mutually exclusive. Thank you. My name is Sara Kavita-Vaus, and I'm in 11th grade at Maharishi School. I'm here because I'm passionate about making change and want to take part in the change that Fairfield goes through as we work on making it more sustainable. I'd like to introduce our second speaker, who is Mary Rankin, the Director of Sustainability at Iowa State University. Mary is responsible for coordinating sustainability activities in support of the Live Green initiative at Iowa State University, which encompasses environmental, economic, and social sustainability. As director, Mary focuses on bringing together multifaceted stakeholder groups towards facilitating dialogue, collaboration, and implementation. In addition to her role as director of sustainability, In addition, she likes to hold position in the city of Ames with engaging the community in sustainability planning and performance. Prior to coming to ISU in 2009, she worked for the Iowa Department of Natural Resources as a program director. Thank you, Mary, for being here with us today.
Well, good morning, everyone. It is really a pleasure to be with all of you today, be a part of this event, and most certainly to share experiences and perspectives in a really unique dual role that I have had the honor to serve in, both serving as Iowa State University's Director of Sustainability and also the sustainability for the city of Ames, the sustainability coordinator there. What I'm excited to share with all of you today is some experiences and perspectives that we have had the opportunity to bring together through unique opportunities, certainly, that reflect the idiosyncrasies, the unique challenges, the unique resources that the City of Ames and also Iowa State University have, but also the collaboration we've been able to put together. And most certainly, the interweaving that has occurred through some really exciting initiatives that I'm excited to share with you. This is all toward looking toward a combined and collective culture of sustainability in our collective community, as well as a shared vision toward a sustainable future. To provide a little bit of background, my start with sustainability was with the Live Green initiative at Iowa State University. This was an initiative that was a presidential initiative by Dr. Gregory Joffrey, our president at the time, in 2008. While this was Dr. Joffrey's personal presidential initiative, he certainly gathered a team of experts, of leadership, resources, expertise from campus, including student voices, to ensure that the most effective and relevant initiative was put forward. And while we certainly had been doing a number of sustainability initiatives ever since the college started in 1858, it was only really the first time that we had considered an overarching commitment that really involved and embraced our entire campus community. And so in putting this initiative together, the president and an advisory committee that he also formed determined that what was so very important is that the collective community have a collective and standard and consistent framework from which to grow and enhance our sustainability efforts. And so in doing so, the president offered, first of all, a challenge to really focus where we wanted our efforts, to convene, to direct. And that really was related to our consideration of our natural resources and environmental sustainability, looking at how we could increase our efficiency as individuals, as a campus, but also the impressive rippling effect that we could have related to global climate impact. The president also offered a call to action, and that was the fact that while we pride ourselves as a university in providing cutting-edge opportunities for our students through academic experiences, and also in the research that we seek out, we apply for grant funding, and we do so in a consideration of not only campus initiatives, but also state, regional, national, and international initiatives. We should embrace that same sort of cutting-edge spirit in every single thing we do on a day-to-day basis toward ensuring the resources, the facilities, the amenities that are provided on campus to ensure the student experience, to support the research that we do. And what this really did is it really gave a call out to every single student, faculty, and staff, all corners of campus, to resonate and invigorate all of our combined commitment, impact, and really responsibility. Another important thing was we all wanted to make sure that we were all defining sustainability from a common ground. And so we have a couple of definitions of sustainability that we have adopted. The first one, many of you are probably very familiar with and have seen it in a number of places. And this is an international sustainability development goal put forward by the United Nations Brundtland Commission. What this definition did, and why we adopted it as a formal definition, is it really offers an all-encompassing connection to a global commitment to a sustainable future. A more working definition of sustainability that we refer to a lot is the whole idea of a three-legged stool. For those of you that have been involved in business discussions, own a business, studying business, this looks a lot like the triple bottom line. The whole idea is that to truly be sustainable, it's not just environmental impact. It is also a healthy economy, a robust economy, strategic decisions on how we invest financial resources through economic sustainability, and also a consideration of how we engage our community, how our community feels connected, how they feel initiatives are relevant to them, and want to be a part of ensuring that difference for generations to come, and to really feel so very inspired to leave the best legacy possible. And so it's only with the consideration of all of these components that we can truly be sustainable. I really stress this definition a lot in all of my discussions with students, faculty, staff, and throughout the Ames community, because it connects us all. Again, it shows we each have a responsibility, regardless of what we may be studying in school, what our profession may be, what our age is, what our income is, and from where we may originate, related to states, countries, and even communities. We're all in this together, and we all have an opportunity to make a difference and leave a legacy. And so in bringing all those components together, really our focus was ensuring we had a team effort at Iowa State University, because we realize that while individuals have an important impact, nothing is accomplished to the significance that ensures that sustainable future alone. All of our actions, all of our decisions make up this impressive tapestry. And so in 2009, I was hired as a director of sustainability. So the important part I want to make related to the difference of the start of the initiative to when I was hired was that a lot of planning went into place, was put into place. And the advisory committee for the president really established three important pillars, and many after that. But one of those pillars related to success for a sustainability initiative was hiring a director of sustainability. But it wasn't until we figured out what was our challenge, what was our call to action, how do we define sustainability, and how do we really focus on our strategies toward engaging the community. And then a director was hired. I'm very honored to say that that was me as the inaugural director. And these were my 4 primary pieces of responsibility. Certainly to carry forward the Live Green initiative, but not necessarily as a subject expert, rather as an expert that could bring together discussions, could bring together resources, could bring together those experts toward dialogue, toward strategizing, and toward success. And certainly to ensure education, engagement, and empowerment pieces for our entire campus community. So from the City of Ames standpoint, the City of Ames was doing a number of pieces related to their 5 focus areas in their EcoSmart program. And the city, about a year after I had started my position, came to the university and inquired about sharing part of my time. What the city had realized is that they had put together some really robust programs related to their operations, but the challenge was the individual really has an impressive and significant layer in ensuring the success of those initiatives beyond just the operations of the city itself, and really to impact the entire community. And so with that in mind, I began my position in a shared role. 25% of my time is dedicated to the city, and 75% of my time is dedicated to the university. And the first initiative that was put forward to me by City Council was related to a very pressing matter, and that was a consideration of whether or not we needed to increase our electrical capacity in the community. We were really on the verge of considering having to revise and having to add to our power plant, and that was very concerning. So they asked that I convene a sustainability task force to specifically look at electrical energy efficiency. It was really rallying the community around something that was very significant to them. And so the charge was to bring together a very representative group of individuals that would identify with multiple sectors in the community, their challenges and their opportunities, and their idiosyncrasies, and develop a sustainability plan that prioritized cost-effective reduction and also considered impediments toward achieving these targets. And based on all of that was a consideration of education, engagement, and empowerment. And so we convened a sector of 7 and representing 17 members that combined and represented this cohesive task force. I have listed there the different sectors that we included in this representation, as well as the number of members serving within those sectors. And you will notice schools and students being very important in that. And so there were different ways in order to take part in this initiative. You could be a task force representative. That included monthly meeting attendance and convening a subcommittee within your sector. Within that subcommittee then really spearheading, putting together a specific sector sustainability plan related to reduction in electrical consumption. So you could be in that leadership role. You could also sign up to be a member of a subcommittee. And you could also sign up to just simply be a consultant that could be notified, could be asked for assistance as that became necessary. Our intent here was to really allow a multifaceted means of being engaged in this process, not having to have special skills or a certain amount of time, but really finding what your niche was, the amount of time you could offer, and then making sure that you could be a part of the solutions. When we put together the plan, this was a year-long process, we found areas of common ground. It was very exciting to see. The collective community had come together and had noted 3 primary areas. First of all, while we thought that a sustainable future was important, these sectors did say yes, absolutely, to our membership. Interest in and dedication toward ensuring a sustainable future is vital. We also uncovered a number of resources that were already out there, that had already been put together. It was just a matter of making the connections between sectors and between experts and expertise. And each sector came up with their own reduction goals, non-prompted by us to having certain expectations. And there were overarching themes. Certainly the need for enhanced and increased focus on education and awareness was key, related to all the sectors. And also enhanced and increased opportunities for the community to engage toward these solutions, as well as the continued focus on sustainability-minded planning and policies. And so since that time, what my contract has been is it is one that is approved annually by the City Council. This is not a done deal, so every year, City Council determines if this is still a good fit. Determining that, then, they provide a list of goals for me to focus on and to accomplish within that year or to be continually working on. I would note that they have given most of the priorities related to different operational areas, again, engaging the public. That has offered some really unique opportunities with Iowa State University toward looking at pieces that students can be involved in, as well as engaging so many different sectors within our community. Different projects such as website content, campaign strategies, deliverables, different immersive experiences, and also sustainability planning in a number of different levels. So I want to talk just a little bit about a few of those initiatives that I think are particularly significant to mention because they offer many different levels of engagement, and they also offer that success in sustainability can come in small steps, not necessarily large, overarching planning pieces. But while you're doing the planning, you can still have success as you move forward. And I think that is so empowering for a community to see the success and to be a part of the smaller projects as you continue to vision the larger leaps and the larger steps that you want to take and plan for funding and for policies to support them. The first initiative was related to food waste diversion. Food waste in our community is particularly of interest because we have a refuse-derived fuel system within our community. All of our garbage goes to a center, and beneficial items that can be processed and combined with natural gas provide the electricity for our community. Food waste, of course, is very problematic for this process. And so with that in mind, we brought in community members. We talked to students. In our community, where students make up over half of the population when our university is in session, they're a very important part of this puzzle. What we've been able to do over the past few years is refine and develop and continue refining a food waste diversion program that now is offered as a no-charge, 24/7, 365 disposal of food waste for composting for anyone in our community. I'm excited to say that as the program has developed, it started piloting in 2019. We've now collected more than 20 tons of food waste through this program. What is also exciting, though, is that most recently, within the last 6 months, we are averaging over 3,000 pounds of food waste being dropped off every month. Rummage Rampage is a pretty exciting event for the community as well. This is an event that specifically targets the fact that so many useful, beneficial items end up on our curbside when our students leave at the end of the year. While the university had been very proactive in putting together a very diversified collection program for unwanted items to keep them out of the waste stream and getting them to beneficial sources, from a community standpoint, it was a little more challenging. And so we got our inspiration from Iowa City. I have to give them credit in the Rummage in the Ramp program. But we really looked at what made sense for Iowa State and the city of Ames. Put together a community planning group, and every year now, this is our 5th year, we just finished this year, we offer around a 7 to 9 day giant community garage sale, where any items that are no longer needed can be brought to to a collective facility in town, a public parking ramp. We price them to sell, and we ensure that beneficial items that have still some life in them can be reused and put in new homes. While this past year we collected over 50 tons of furniture, I'm excited to say that in all 5 years we've collected about 200 tons of material that otherwise would have been landfilled. None of this material is beneficial to our resource recovery system. We also have raised over $100,000 through this event. Now, I want to note that all the proceeds from this event go to nonprofit organizations that provide volunteer service for the event. None of it goes back to the city or the university. And finally, we've added a unique partnering opportunity as well with our local animal shelters in offering a drop-off for pets that can no longer be cared for. Oftentimes, we find that students may release fish in area ponds, and a kitten they just know will find a home if they just release it in their neighborhood. And we want to make sure that these resources also are given the opportunity to find beneficial and loving homes. The Smart Business Challenge is another really unique initiative because what the Smart Business Challenge has done is it's offered an opportunity for our businesses to celebrate their commitment to sustainability and also connect to resources and connect to each other. This is a program that was suggested within the Sustainability Task Force Sustainability Plan, and this is an opportunity that allows different levels of certification based on completing a checklist. We currently have about 40 participants with a real diversity in membership as well as those achieving the highest certification of platinum. I would note that this is managed by 2 interns that intern at the City of Ames, so that's been a nice campus and community connection. And the 10 sustainability performance areas are focused on all areas of sustainability, not just environmental, again, to ensure that full, encompassing, and overarching connection toward a sustainable future. We are currently in the process of completing our first climate action plan for the City of Ames. We finished last year a full greenhouse gas inventory and have engaged in that climate action planning process. We just finished our first council workshop, and I'm excited to say we've got a very robust engagement plan in place. We also have brought on, similarly to the Sustainability Task Force, a multi-sector community committee known as the Supplemental Input Committee. As well as completing information about greenhouse gas inventory, we also have a solar PV study that we've completed for potentials related to that, and also a climate vulnerability study. Now, as far as the impact, I think, between the university and the city working together, I just wanted to briefly mention the fact that there's a really unique opportunity through a sustainability tracking assessment rating system called STARS. This is an international rating system offered by the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education. What the university does every 3 years is we report on 17 areas of performance, including over 1,000 data points, which I have noted here. And this really benchmarks our progress as a university, but also as a member of a community. We've been very excited that in 3 submissions so far, we've achieved a gold certification. Of course, we continue to look for opportunities for platinum. But there have been some really wonderful connections we've been able to make with the community that both assist the community and the university. Campus renewable energy is one of those pieces, looking at the shared opportunity to join in a wind contract with the city and also to support the city's brand new solar energy project. There's also some great sustainability engagement opportunities through sustainability courses, which have connection to community challenges, research that we are doing with a number of community efforts, immersive experiences to provide our students that experience right in their own community of solving sustainability challenges, and public engagement, events, opportunities, partnerships, collaboration. Really, at the end of all of this and the consideration as I reflect back, we certainly have a footprint that we leave on our community, but what is the handprint? What is the outstretched collaboration and commitment that we can offer to each other collectively? Certainly considering that individual is vital, and we do it in all that we do. And in a collective call to action, I think these are key components. I know my time is out, so I won't read each of those, but I know that this will be taped later. But I really think that these are key in the success that we have had and the future that we continue to look forward to. And I will leave you just with this quote that, again, I think you can refer to the recorded version for the full quote, but it basically reminds us that sustainability is a journey. It's one that isn't often as exciting, as productive as we would like, but moving forward is vital, it's important, it's relevant, and it involves and requires all of us. And I'm certainly happy to provide any opportunities for collaboration in the future. Thank you for the opportunity, and congratulations on your exciting journey.
Thank you, Mary. We look forward to hearing more from you during the panel discussion. In particular, your dual role in working for both ISU and the City of Ames is a very similar setup to that role that our new sustainability coordinator for Fairfield will be playing. My name is Tess Payton, and I am in 12th grade at Fairfield High School. I am here because I care about my school district and community's sustainability. As a student, I am a representative of the next generation as we push to develop a more resilient community of Fairfield. It is time to take action to undo the irreversible damage that we have done to our planet. I would like to introduce our third speaker, Gina Bell. Gina is the Sustainable Community Coordinator for the City of Dubuque, Iowa. She is responsible for delivering the Mayor and City Council sustainability and resiliency priorities by working across city departments and with citizens, businesses, and community partners to implement the Climate Action Plan. Her work focuses on the intersection of equity, mitigation, and adaptation strategies as it relates to the Dubuque community. She staffs the Resilient Community Advisory Commission. Gina graduated from Pacific University and then served in the Peace Corps in Paraguay. Upon returning to the U.S., Gina began working at Adelante Mujeres, where she continued working with a diverse group of stakeholders on equity, trauma reduction, regenerative agriculture, and marketing. This work led her to the city of Portland, Oregon, where she managed the Economic Opportunity Initiative, Micro-Enterprise Development Program, and created a new small business development program. After 20 years on the West Coast and abroad, Gina returned to Iowa in 2018 to address climate change in her hometown. Please welcome Gina to our small corner of Iowa.
Good morning. So as I was introduced, I was born in Dubuque and raised in Dubuque, and then I went to the West Coast and recently came back with my family, and I'm thrilled to be back. I inherited a sustainability program in Dubuque. I get to take credit for a lot of great work that happened while I lived on the West Coast. But the history of sustainability in Dubuque really started with our current mayor. He's in his last term as mayor, but he ran on a sustainability platform. He didn't necessarily call it a sustainability platform, but he likes to tell the story that he knocked on 4,995 doors because he printed 5,000 brochures and he had 5 left. And what he heard from people was that they wanted to be engaged as partners, and they were worried about their neighbors, they were worried about the planet, and they were worried about the economy. And so when he came in, he really had this input from residents, and it also coincided with the birth of his first grandchild, and he started to think about legacy. And this is really where the sustainability movement in Dubuque began. And so in 2006, at the council goal setting, Mayor Buell encouraged his council colleagues to adopt sustainability as a top priority, and it has been a top priority ever since. And he likes to say, cities that get out in front of sustainability will have competitive economic advantages in the future. And this has been true for Dubuque, and we believe it will continue to be true as we implement our sustainability plan. Dubuque had a really tough 80s and sort of reinvented itself with its sustainability initiatives. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've been able to do, where I want to take our sustainability program, and hopefully encourage all of you to get involved and participate in what Fairfield has to offer. Okay, so after Mayor Buell and the council named sustainability a top priority, they immediately moved to create a citywide task force. So it was a 2-year process. There were 40 task force members. They came from all sorts of sectors. There are 3 universities or colleges in Dubuque. There were representatives from the religious community, from the high schools, business, nonprofit, and city. And they brought together all these diverse backgrounds to talk about interests, everyday issues that sustainability could address, and they collected a ton of community input, not just from the task force, but from who the task force touched, several surveys and in-person meetings, and the results of the efforts helped inform the vision for sustainable Dubuque. And this is the idea that there is a balance between quality of life and economic prosperity and environmental integrity and social and cultural vibrancy. So, as Mary touched on, community engagement is really critical to this work, and Dubuque sustainability efforts have been focused on community engagement from the very beginning. And as Josh mentioned, having leadership, having a mayor and a city council behind this effort was also critical to our success. And so after the task force had met and gathered a ton of community engagement, they formed the Sustainable Dubuque 2.0, and that really looked, it was a partnership with IBM. They started to look at how Dubuque could be a smarter, sustainable city, which I'll talk about in a moment. There was the Environmental Stewardship Commission, which was also a citizen commission that informed council, and it has since morphed into the Resilient Community Advisory Commission. And initially, some challenges where there were competing interests, limited resources, which remains to be a challenge. The city is many city governments, I shouldn't just say Dubuque, are slow in our processes, and so we would burn through community activists, or people would be really excited about something. And conversely, there were people who said, oh, Dubuque's good. They've got a sustainability plan. The mayor's on board. Like, we don't have to do anything. We're good. And so we continue to face those issues and bring in new people. But with the Resilient Community Advisory Commission, we get a lot of citizen input. And they come together once a month and meet with me to make advice or to advise the council. But they also are talking to people throughout the month and gathering input, continuing. And that's been happening for several years. So here is our model, similar to what Mary showed. And really, this is what every city department is doing. They're asking, does this help or harm the environment? Does it treat citizens equitably? And does it make financial sense? And not everything we do meets all three of these things. Ideally, it would. But we want that as a guide, and to be at least asking those questions and making sure that we can explain to our budget, through our budget process, or to citizens, where it fits in our model. It's a holistic approach to make our community more sustainable, and under each of these, each leg, social and cultural vibrancy, economic prosperity, and environmental integrity, there are different principles that also lead into that. So Smarter Sustainable Dubuque was a public-private partnership with IBM, and we wanted to become a smart city. So this initiated in 2009, and similar to what Mary was talking about, we started looking at using data to help residents understand their usage with water and electricity and transportation. And so we wanted to better utilize the services that we offered while also incentivizing residents to A, participate, and B, better understand how they could save money. So with the smarter electricity, we partnered with Alliant Energy, and using IBM technology, we used new smart meters and helped folks set goals for reduction. And then research determined that about 26% of average household use in Dubuque is phantom power. And so we did an education campaign to help people reduce their energy use by about 3 to 11% in some cases, just by using power strips and turning things off or unplugging them when they're not using them. With smarter travel, we started to look at our transportation system, and we got people to wear trackers so we could see where people want to be going, where they were driving, and where people got off the bus and then walked to or took another form of transportation. And then we got to overlay our transportation system to go to places where people wanted to go. And that had about 500 participants, and it really increased our transportation ridership. I remember being a little kid in Dubuque, and no one rode the bus because it only went from downtown to the mall and back. And so unless you were downtown and wanting to go to the mall on the West End, you didn't ride the bus. And now we have increased our ridership by quite a bit. And then we also had a smarter discards program where people agreed to let volunteers go through their trash and then make recommendations of how they could divert waste, or if, and it then led to our curbside composting and food scrap program. And that helped divert about 5% of household waste for the time of the program. And then we continue to look at how we can increase education and get more folks to participate in our food scrap program. And so our goal since the very beginning has always been a 50% reduction by 2030. So that's 50% of our greenhouse gas emissions of our 2003 levels by 2030. We're currently at about 27%. And our initial climate action plan really looked at how to mitigate. That was it. And in our update, we have included adaptation measures, resiliency pieces. It all goes through an equity lens so we can make sure that our most vulnerable populations are going to be taken care of. But this has been our goal, and we're sticking strong. And then as we approach 2030, we need to think about what's next. So we've been able to accomplish some really amazing things in Dubuque, and when I left in the 90s, I didn't see a future for myself in Dubuque, and so it was really exciting to start to think about coming back and seeing all of the changes that they've made. So a very well-known project in Dubuque is the Bee Branch Watershed Project. This is at its heart a flood mitigation project. It directly addresses the impacts of climate change. Flash flooding and flooding is always an issue in Iowa, and this project focuses on managing the increasing intensity of rainstorms, holding water back, and then slowly releasing it, trying to curb flash flooding, as well as damages to homes and businesses. And so there's a story that our mayor loves to tell, where the impetus for this really came when there was a massive rainstorm, basements were flooding in this area, people started to worry about what was happening in their basement as tornado sirens went off. And so they were in this weird position where they had to decide if they were gonna shelter from the tornado while waters were rising in their basement. They were sort of stuck in this limbo, and it came to light that we needed to do something, especially for this area. And so the creek was buried underground. It was an old stormwater sewer, and we daylighted the creek. It also includes several retention basins, and as we increased development up the bluff in Dubuque, if you know the topography, there's bluffs, and it used to be farmland, and it's now paved over. And so that increased runoff, so we needed to slow that water that was coming down the bluff as it was trying to get to the river. But beyond just a flood mitigation project, this became a community gem. It's a linear park. There's an orchard, it's a citizen science center, there's a grade school that's right along the banks, and they go out there and check on the mussels and look at the wildlife and do other very engaging things. And it's really brought a lot of people that have never been to this area of town to come and enjoy. And as we look at our connectivity, we're starting to link up trails. And then just the other night, I was at a 400-person outdoor dinner. It was all one long table that stretched along this creek, just to celebrate community and have a conversation about resiliency. Another thing we've done is turn a brownfield, an EPA-designated brownfield, to a bright field. So we partnered with Alliant Energy, and we created this demonstration solar field in downtown Dubuque. And then we also have a larger one out west that it took a lot of different partnership agreements, and Dubuque is really big on public-private partnerships. That's how we see things getting done. And so this is a great example right in our downtown area that you can see. It's very visible. And something that I'm working on now is a low to moderate income solar project. We're hoping to get solar onto households of low to moderate income, because there is a huge barrier for that subset of folks to enter the solar market. Our wastewater treatment plant, now called the Water and Resource Recovery Center, was constructed in 2013. It was our largest capital improvement project until the Bee Branch came along. But the plant went from being our largest user of energy to net zero. And in the first year of operation, it saved the city $600,000. So again, it made economic sense, even though it was a very expensive project. It not only treats the waste of our community, but also we accept waste from industries. So high strength waste, and then it creates methane, which is then captured to power the plant, and potentially eventually to be used in other uses. So other things that we've achieved, green alleyways are a part of our Bee Branch flood mitigation, but this is again to slow water down, as well as clean it as it's being absorbed into our alleyways. We've put solar on our fire stations. They made the most sense because they're operational 24 hours a day. We've adopted a sustainable unified development code. It's the expectation now instead of the exception. We have several green buildings, and we continue to work on revitalizing the historic Millwork District, which again, when I was growing up, was just a bunch of empty warehouses, and now is home to restaurants, and really good restaurants, and housing, and a bunch of other great uses. And then we're also, in October, we'll be doing a ribbon cutting for landfill gas capture. Again, it's a public-private partnership. And we also offer an internal in the city revolving loan fund for energy efficiency. And so our fire station our headquarters was able to do an energy efficiency project using money from the revolving loan fund with a 2-year payback, but they've paid almost the entire thing back within 1 year. Oh, I'm so bad at technology, my apologies. Okay, so less flashy, but very important sustainability successes that we've had in the city. We've incorporated sustainability into our existing work. So our comprehensive plan has aligned with our climate action plan. Our annual budget process asks department managers as they're submitting budget requests to talk about the sustainability aspects of the project, and it gets extra points, which means it's more likely to be funded if it meets sustainability goals. Our purchasing process has been revised to include the cost of carbon for fleet, as well as looking at where we're purchasing and could we reuse something that's stored in City Hall basement. Just making people slow down a little bit and think about what resources we already have. And I already mentioned the revolving loan fund. We do have a community greenhouse gas inventory that we update every 3 years, and our climate action plan. We just updated our climate action plan, as I mentioned, to include a lot more equity considerations, as well as more adaptive measures to really make sure that Dubuque is a resilient community moving forward. I've talked about our public-private partnerships. And then looking at economic development and green jobs and company attraction, Dubuque's done a really great job of selling itself as a sustainable city, which has attracted employers and businesses, which then in turn helps us continue to fund our climate action efforts. And then very important is having a measurement tool. And we want to make sure that we're measuring what we're doing so that we can say, hey, we've come from point A to point B. And I thought Mary's point was really great in that we have to measure the little successes because it seems overwhelming at times to tackle what we're facing. And yet we have to do something. And so making sure that we're measuring it, it's good after a year to sit down and say like, oh, okay, we've made progress. So some lessons learned, municipal commitment requires policy leader support. So I will admit I'm a little nervous to see our mayor leave because he has been a champion and always the voice saying, but what about sustainability? And so that's really, really critical to move this work forward. Community input is also a requirement, and you can do it and keep doing it and do it some more. Make sure that you can share with people what's in it for me. That's what they really want to know. And it's a pretty easy sell. There's oftentimes economic or comfort benefits. And then there's sustainability as an economic development tool. Dubuque has been successful in using it as an economic development tool. And then have a plan. Federal and state agencies, as well as private foundations, like to fund projects that fit within a larger vision. And so I think I'm running out of time, but I'm going to go very quickly just so they have an idea of what the Office of Sustainability looks like in Dubuque. It's me, and sometimes an intern. I have a $228,000 annual budget, and we offer Sustainable Dubuque grants, climate action implementation. Normally we hold the Growing Sustainable Communities Conference every October, but we just canceled it, and lots more. So I'm going to end there. And so you have my slide with my contact information. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation and your work in Dubuque. We'll hear more from you during the panel discussion, I'm sure. Of particular interest is how the intersection of equity, mitigation, and adaptation has played in your community. My name is Yabzaggat Hafise, and I'm in 11th grade at the Marashi School. I'm here because I would like to be a part of the change that Fairfield and the world goes through to become more sustainable. Last, but certainly not least, I would like to welcome Jeff Gratz. Jeff is a member of the energy team at the Iowa Economic Development Authority. He oversees implementation of the Iowa Green Streets criteria to support development of high-performance housing and community facility projects. Jeff also supports AIDA's disaster resilience and disaster recovery project management efforts, as well as downtown assessments with the Iowa Downtown Resource Center. Jeff might be best described as a chief collaboration officer, or the person that connects the dots to take projects from vision to reality. Jeff will be speaking today about an innovative project in West Union, Iowa that is a truly model of resilience. And I understand that he has some additional amazing stories up his sleeve as well. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Thank you, students, for being here. It's great to see you here. West Union, town of about 2,500, county seat, Fayette County, Northeast Iowa. Now you see where they are. A little aerial of the community. It's not a large community. It's pretty compact. Great street grid. Actually a pretty beautiful community, beautiful surroundings. It's where the prairies and the hills meet in Northeast Iowa. It's a community that's a lot of pride throughout their community, the schools, the homes, but it wasn't necessarily there in downtown. It was pretty rough. So what happened? What started this journey for West Union? Well, actually, what happened is they were recruiting a doctor to the regional hospital, and that doctor brought his wife to the community, and as soon as she saw downtown, she said, I can't live here. And that was it. That was the end of the interview. And that was really what jump-started plans for a downtown streetscape project in West Union. At that same time, in 2008, West Union was a new member of our Main Street Iowa program. We also had a new director, a new division administrator, Tim Waddell, who wanted to launch the sustainability initiative at the Economic Development Authority. So, well, let's see what we can do if we partner with the community and partner all of our programs, or many of our programs, in a focused effort. Can we help a community in a transformative approach? So we needed a pilot town. We approached West Union. West Union was acceptive of being a pilot community. About 2 days after we met with them, we got a letter of interest from about 20 community partners saying, yeah, we want to be your pilot. Come help us. The initial project was focused on 6 blocks of downtown. The original concept was just a typical poured-in-place concrete street. They were going to do maybe a little mid-block plaza by the courthouse, but that was it. We worked with the community to bring in lots of outside resources, had a community visioning session for 2.5 days. We brought in many state and federal partners, and that's a key piece that I'll talk about several times this morning. Community input. Held community input as well. Presentations, got input on the vision. And what came out of that 2.5-day community visioning effort was a sustainable vision for West Union. And I highlighted some of the bold there, some of the key pieces that came out of that vision, but a vibrant community, increased community spirit, thriving businesses, growth, a place where people will love to go and want to return. And they developed some guiding principles as they continue to refine the concepts for what we want to do as a community downtown. Here's what's going to guide us. We want to do it collaboratively. It's got to be something that has long-term sustainable impact. It's going to create a great setting for our businesses. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be reflective of the authenticity of West Union, and it's going to inspire people through education. And I think, as I've learned over the years, one of the key things in these visioning processes are to have visuals. You have to have that, help people see the possible. And that's the other key piece of bringing in those state, federal partners, people like me, Mary and Gina and Josh, is you get to find out what is possible, what are other people doing, what can we learn from them. So the concepts were developed and quickly became focused on stormwater management, energy efficiency, safe and beautiful pedestrian experience, attractive places for business, and how do we incorporate education and inspiration into all of it. In collaboration, we had a whole section about implementation and resources in the vision and the plan. And give you an idea what that impact can look like, having all of those different parties around the room and having USDA and Department of Energy and Department of Natural Resources and Economic Development, all of those at the table during the visioning process. At the end of the 2.5 days, we went around the room and said, you've heard the vision, you've seen the concepts, how might you help West Union achieve the vision? And we came out of there with a list of 53 funding sources that potentially could help them implement the vision. Later on, as the vision was further developed, we got together, a few of us, down the street at one of the local restaurants. I still have the napkin right here. Yep, those things happen, right? Those cocktail napkin discussions. We laid out a plan. This is how you might fund this, West Union, to make it happen. And it takes these partners. And as you can see, this project became much more extensive, included street, sidewalk, lighting. You saw the fact that there wasn't storm sewer there. Some of the sanitary sewer needed to be replaced. Street, sidewalks were in poor condition. There was interest in how do we leverage a ground source heat pump or geothermal system to improve the efficiency of our energy performance in the buildings downtown. How do we manage stormwater with porous pavement type of systems and rain gardens or bioretention cells? How do we create that community gathering space with the civic plaza? And how do we add other amenities? And all of those things. So what started out as a $4 million, we're just going to put in new concrete and maybe a little plaza in front of the courthouse, became a $10.5 million project, of which about $7.5 million of that actually was leveraged from outside resources. So a community that had committed $4.1 million to do a new concrete street and a little plaza ended up spending about $2.5 million in getting a much more robust, sustainable, and efficient project. Not to mention the dozen building facades that were improved and the dozen apartments that were added upper story. But it does take more than money and vision. You have to make the business case. And we had a lot of those discussions. The consultants there did a lot of work of comparing, here's the cost, here's the benefit of various approaches. But what I can't stress enough is communication. This is the big lesson learned here. In that sustainability plan for West Union, there was a whole section on communication. There was a communication strategy and what that strategy should be and what it will do. Unfortunately, that was the part of the plan that did not get carried out very well. And what happens when you don't have good communication is you get flyers around town like this, and you get city council meetings like this. That was a fun evening. And eventually end up with things like this, where you have a city administrator who's been there for 20 plus years, they've been supportive of the project for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden writes an open letter, editor, to the local paper saying, I can't support this project anymore. And then a few months later, retires in about a 2-week period. So you've got to communicate, you've got to make sure the messages are clear and they're informative and they're factual, and you keep the facts out there. And you have to go meet people where they're at. And it takes champions to do that. These are some of those key champions in this community. In the upper left, we've got the mayor, we've got a local banker. That was the upper left. Lower left, a local business owner, and really champion for this project. In the middle, a local civil engineer, well respected by everybody in the community, who could really provide the factual information. The local Main Street director, Robin in the center, and then Bob Votts in the right, who became the city administrator during this project and really was the guy who got the communication process back on track and was really key to going out, meeting with the community, going to the coffee shops, going to the barber shop, the salon, the grocery store, and really talking to people and clearing up a lot of misinformation. It takes patience. I mean, this is a project that took about 3 years to build out. But when it gets done, this is what the reality looked like. They had completed weatherization and energy audit services for many of the buildings downtown, a district geothermal system, is now stubbed into all 60 buildings downtown, of which 11 buildings are currently utilizing that system. They converted all their streetlights to LED. They have a porous paver system streets, so now a 3-inch rainfall is completely infiltrated in their downtown area and no longer runs off downtown into Otter Creek, which just east of town is a trout stream that now has naturally reproducing trout that the DNR has never found there before. And part of that they attribute to this streetscape project. The many streetscapes amenities, storm sewer that they never had, improved sanitary sewer, plaza, green roof demonstration. Here's a highlight of the 11 buildings on the system. And you might remember what that before picture looked like. Here's a picture that really captures that improved streetscape, stormwater system, the lighting, the building rehabs, mid-block crossings to make pedestrians crossings much easier there. There's streets where the crossing was almost 90 feet. We've got it down to under 70 now. Created a great sense of place, preserved architecture. Recruited businesses to the community. That building that used to be vacant on the corner now has 2 apartments upstairs and a shoe store on the first floor. We created that place where the community gathers, makes memories, has recruited additional businesses to the area. I think one of the key things on this whole piece here is you'll notice right in the middle, new owners of buildings. We had 17 buildings out of 60 change ownership as this process was happening because people saw the potential and wanted to be part of it and wanted to invest. So lessons learned. Got to engage that community from the visioning to the completion and ongoing. It can't stop. It has to continue. Did I mention communication? Got to go back to these. Hire skilled and experienced consultants. It really is key, and was really key in West Union's case, to have a consultant who had done a lot of work like this, not to this scale, but components of it all over really the country, and could share with the community during that visioning process what's possible, what are other people doing. Invite those local and state partners and federal partners to identify the resources, whether they're technical or financial, that can help you. Those strong leaderships, those champions are key. The community invested in a grant writer. If you're going to leverage $10.5 million and a dozen resources or more from outside the community, you need somebody with those expertise who can focus on that, and that's a skill that's very valuable. And I mentioned the local champions. And then what West Union hasn't really done, but the potential is still there, is really promoting what they've done and what it means for the community and those who could come to the community in the future. And speaking of the future, so West Union always knew what they needed to do. This is a plan. This was drawn in 1971. If you overlay what they did in 2013 with 71, they're the same. It just took them 40 years to get there. So don't take 40 years to get there. I think you know what you need to do. I've provided a bunch of links to other resources. There's a full documentary out there. There's also a Larry King profile series program on this as well. So that's West Union. But I want to touch on the couple minutes I have left, 2 other communities. One is Bloomfield, not very far away. Community, again, about 2,500 people, has done a lot. Hundreds of energy audits throughout the community, retrofitted their school lighting, worked with the Department of Natural Resources and EPA on a focused effort with some of the larger energy users in town, and installed a large solar array. They've done a lot more. I could talk for an hour just about Bloomfield, but one of the things that may be of interest to you is their energy independence roadmap. And then I want to finish with one more, and this takes us a little further away, but Wilpolstried, Germany, a town of 2,500, maybe slightly bigger than that, but in a 20-year period has gone from we want to become energy independent to now having at least 11 wind turbines, 5, I believe, methane digesters on local farms in their community, and about 200 solar array installations in the community. So the point now where they're generating 5 times the annual energy use of this community, And by selling that excess energy back into the grid, they're bringing in $5 million a year of extra revenue to this community of 2,800 people. And I think the other thing that's important about this is those wind farms, they're owned by the local residents who basically created cooperative models, which we're all very familiar with here in Iowa. So I think it's a really fascinating story. But if you Google Fairfield Germany, there are lots of videos out there.
Thank you, Jeff, for sharing with us your amazing stories. I understand that there's a brochure out front that provides an overview of what was accomplished in West Union, Iowa. Thank you to the audience for your long attention span. Now, we would like to give you all a chance to speak.
So given that Jeff had communication after every point, and I think that that's a really crucial issue, let's talk about how do you keep the community engaged for the duration? And I think all three of our panelists would have something to say about that. So
it's kind of a three-prong approach, I think. I think that there is always a consideration of ensuring that you are informing and being very transparent in that information for your community. So having a readily, publicly available resource that the community can refer to in their own time. So not necessarily an event that they need to attend or a meeting that they need to be a part of, but a resource. It can be as simple as a website, just to let the community know the process of what's happening, the primary pieces going on, and then and also how to interact, how to ask questions, how to provide feedback, I think is vital. I think the second piece is just always looking for new options. So always challenging yourself, always getting that feedback from the community, even putting questions out, on that interactive website, putting questions out where people will find them. The point was made, I think, a few times of meeting people where they are. This is really vital in really getting that communication piece. So inviting that feedback from the community and then considering that feedback. How can that feedback really resonate into the things that you're doing? And then I would also say just consider always creative approaches, not taking anything off of the table. Every community is different, every community is unique, every community has different idiosyncrasies and different needs. So that's what I would offer.
Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. I just wanted to, what Mary said, but also, at least in Dubuque, a little bit of gossip always helps. So word travels fast, and so if you can plant a seed and with someone that you know is going to tell someone else, that's a really great way to communicate. In Peace Corps, we called it radio so'o. And that's how I learned that then, and I've been using it ever since. I think the other thing that's really important is as you're getting community input, when you do follow through, make sure you're communicating that and following up with people and saying, hey, this was your idea, and trying to give credit where credit is due, because then people get excited and reinvigorated over and over and over again. And then the last thing I'll mention is, in terms of sustainability, it's life. It's our everyday issues can be addressed. And so I like to not talk about climate action or sustainability in my communications, but rather, what are your everyday issues? Do you have trouble getting to and from work? Do you have too high electricity bills? And then I do the linking to my work, but let people just share their experience, because then it matters to them.
I look to Dubuque as the model, because I think if you ask the 50-some, 60,000 residents of Dubuque, there's a high knowledge, I think, of sustainable Dubuque. They really have done it very well from both we like to use the terms the high touch and the high tech approach, so the in-person as well as the online. In the case of West Union, we've circled back over the last year to try and help dispel some of the myths that are still there and help the community really realize they have an asset there with that district geothermal system and all they've done in their downtown, but they haven't fully leveraged it. So the folks who have been working in West Union, really have spent a lot of time with the users of the system and trying to develop case studies. How's it working? What's not working? How do we make it better? And just having those community forums, presenting regularly at the city council meetings. They've created the new Green Up West Union website, I believe is to provide updated information. It's just really coming, I think you got to come at it all the time and from all angles, it seems like. And it's a hard thing to do. We don't do it very well because we either don't have the time, the people, the money, or the patience, or all the above. I think in Dubuque, the community foundation there has put a lot of effort into the Orton Family Foundation, the heart and soul approach to gathering community visions and actually through storytelling. And I think that could be a really excellent way to do it, but you'll learn pretty quickly in that process. It takes years to do that. So it takes a lot of commitment.
Hi, my name is Doug Flournoy. I'm on the City Council here in Fairfield, so we're always worried about budget and overhead. So my question maybe to Jeff, I'm not sure if you can answer this question, is the porous pavers that are put into West Union, does the city need to buy specialized equipment to maintain those pavers? 2, is the lifetime of those pavers similar to a regular paver? And 3, what kind of water flow can those pavers manage over time? For instance, what kind of rainfall can you manage completely to eliminate runoff?
Great, good questions. So sure. So there was a question about maintenance of the pavers. West Union's street sweeper was on its last leg before this project got started, so they already intended to buy a new one. So they purchased one with the vacuum capabilities that they're able to use to vacuum out a couple times a year that porous paver system to maintain it. The pavers, I think, typically come with a 25 to 30-year warranty or guarantee on them. They're produced in a factory. They're a much higher compression strength than what you would get in a poured-in-place concrete street. With that said, one of the challenges in the West Union project is they did get a bad batch of pavers. The paver manufacturer has admitted to that, and we had some problems with spalling or the tops of the pavers coming off and looking pretty bad, to be honest. So the manufacturer's been working with the city for the last few years to replace most of the pavers in their downtown. With that said, we've used the same company in other pavers in other places, like in Charles City, who has about 28 blocks of porous paver streets and have had none of those issues. So we think this is a pretty random situation. But the key with the paver system is the base that goes underneath of it, having the right stone specified, the right size, and that it's clean and compacted well, so you can avoid those issues. And then the third question was about, it'll come to you. How much rain? Yes, so actually those paver systems are very interesting, and part of how much rain, it depends on how thick that rock storage area is underneath the pavers. The pavers themselves, I've seen studies where they'll do like 200 or 300 inches of rain in an hour, some crazy numbers like that. But in West Union's case, so these systems are almost always installed with a subdrain underneath them in case they clog up or there's a large event. When they have a 3-inch, a little over a 3-inch rain event, there's still no water coming out of the end of the system on a regular basis there. So we typically say about a 3-inch rain event is being infiltrated in the downtown of West Union. And we've seen that impact on improvements in water quality in Otter Creek and their natural reproducing trout that are there now in the city golf course just east of town.
Okay. We have our first online question from Barbara Stone. She asks, do any of the sustainability coordinators have local food security / resilience in your plans? If yes, could you speak about that plan briefly?
I can go. Yes, we talk about local foods and food access in our climate action plan, and resiliency is the overarching theme for the climate action plan. We haven't made very much progress, unfortunately, but we got some funding from City Council that started July 1, and we're hoping that we can do a deeper look at how we can incorporate local foods. And there are some great nonprofits that we'll partner with that are also working on local foods efforts for Dubuque.
For Ames, we are really just getting into our climate action planning process. That being said, we did complete as a prior document in preparation for our climate action planning a climate vulnerability study alongside doing a greenhouse gas inventory and looking at potentials for renewable energy. And so resilience is certainly a piece of that puzzle that is on our radar and of priority. I would mention at the university there's been a lot of work in collaboration with the city looking at food security for our student population, and also the consideration of food waste, not just composting, but being put back in for a greater use. Looking at free meal programs in our communities for food, for example, that might not be consumed during catering events, food that cannot be sold in our cafes because it was prepared the day before, prepackaged sandwiches, those sorts of things. So we've been doing a lot of, I think, really interesting and impactful collaborative efforts. Also, we just finished looking at even putting together a map of microwaves in our common spaces around our campus so that students can know where they can actually bring meals from home and warm those up. So a few different collaborative initiatives that involve campus and community, and we're looking very forward to what sort of action items come out of our climate action planning process for this area.
And I'm not directly involved, but the city of Des Moines does have a food insecurity task force, and Jeremy Karen, who's the sustainability manager for the city of Des Moines, would be a contact there to learn more about that.
Great presentations, very inspiring. I have two questions. I've always thought we really need to turn off the faucet in terms of all the waste, in terms of water waste, electrical overuse, food waste, and I was wondering, are you doing anything in terms of looking before all this is accumulated, turning the faucets off in terms of education, and have you had any success in that? And my second question is, how cooperative and motivated is Alliant Energy to help in your endeavors? So those are my two questions. Thank you.
I would say that in our planning efforts related to all of our sustainability components, particularly environmental sustainability, we always talk about reduction first and foremost, and education and awareness. While I will say that many come to campus, particularly I think we've done a great job of inspiring our younger generation to look for the recycling bins and look for the composting bins. And so now we have posed a new challenge to our complete campus community, whether it be faculty, staff, or students, to really make that decision at that point of purchase or at that point of consumption. Is this really necessary? how is another way that I can accomplish the action or the goal that I have before me without necessarily purchasing this item or purchasing this item in a more durable manner that doesn't have that post-consumer impact. So certainly that's a piece of the puzzle. And I would also note that the university is involved in discussions that the Iowa Department of Natural Resources is currently undertaking related to sort of readjusting the consideration of waste based on the Environmental Protection Agency's waste hierarchy. And that is a sustainable materials management model that specifically addresses ensuring that beneficial consideration upstream rather than just necessarily how we can manage items downstream. And so that's been a very interesting process. The department has information on their website. I encourage you to take a look at that for more information and to continue to follow that progress, because it really will encompass all of our state communities and opportunities in moving forward. Oh, related to Alliant Energy, one thing that I would say is that I know that our electric services department at the City of Ames has had a number of discussions with Alliant on various opportunities, whether it be related to EV charging, also renewable energy potentials. From the campus standpoint, and having our own utility, we work first and foremost directly with the City of Ames, but also we have found Alliant to be a very collaborative partner and to offer a lot of interesting ideas and opportunities for discussion and strategizing.
I would say, so as I mentioned, I'm an office of one, so I have to really focus on where I'm going to spend my energy. And fortunately, Dubuque has a waste reduction coordinator that's funded by our solid waste agency, and the University of Dubuque, Loras College, and Clark University, and some other institutions of higher ed in Dubuque just collaborated with the solid waste agency to hire a second to really focus on college campuses in town. So I don't personally do a lot of work related to sort of that waste reduction, but there are people that are working on it in Dubuque, as well as we host a Green Iowa energy and community team, and so they look at energy efficiency in households and definitely have conversations about waste reduction and phantom energy, as well as the energy districts of Iowa. Some of these communities have one, Dubuque County has one, and they are also doing education related to that. So people are working on it, it's not necessarily me. And in terms of Alliant, cooperative, yes. Motivated, sometimes. And I'll leave it at that.
In West Union, for this project, remember this started out as just a downtown streetscape project, so really wasn't focused on kind of that upstream materials, resources, conservation, kind of the waste reduction side of things. Definitely didn't have any conversations about food waste there, but we really were focused on water as a resource and how to turn it into an amenity, and also focused on the energy. And we started with conservation before we got to the district geothermal, and partnered with the city and the local banks to provide some incentives for those local businesses to have blower door tests done, some air infiltration tests done, and air sealing types of activities, and some improvements on the energy performance side first, so that we could get the biggest bang for the buck from the district geothermal system. And Alliant is the electric provider in West Union, and was fine to work with. They've become much more active on the solar side. In fact, West Union, and I think they have 9 public buildings, and 7 of them are served by Alliant, and West Union has added solar to all of them in the last couple of years. And also Alliant does have some storage projects going on now as well. So.
I just wanted to add one more thing in terms of water. The City of Dubuque is currently looking at our fee structures, because right now, the more water you use, the better rate you get. And we don't want to incentivize wasting water. And so we're looking at that, but we are also the water utility. And so, and there's some deferred maintenance. So we have to balance how we're managing our waters, but also not wasting it. So we're tackling it. It's going to be a hard and long conversation, but it's definitely on our radar.
Hello, my name is Arlene Schar-Leffler, and this is regarding climate change, and specifically disaster preparedness and infrastructure. When I moved to Fairfield 3 years ago, the first thing I did was make phone calls to find out a nearby tornado shelter, and there wasn't any. I don't have a basement. A lot of people in Fairfield don't have basements, so this is a real concern. What I would like to see happen is in the short term to have a designated tornado shelter in the basement of the courthouse at Main and Briggs. And in the long term, I would like to see designated tornado shelters set up in the basements of public buildings, schools, businesses, churches. And I would like to hear from our panel any suggestions that they might have along those lines so that every resident of Fairfield can have a safe place to go in the event of a tornado.
Thank you. It's a good topic. We actually, putting on one of my other hats, I think in my introductions they talked about the fact that I work a lot with disaster recovery projects, particularly working a lot now across the state with flood mitigation and water quality projects that were a response to previous disasters we've had. And also currently working on disaster recovery housing in southwest Iowa as a response to the 2019 flooding in the southwest portion of the state. And in our program that we've developed for the disaster recovery housing, we actually have bolstered our sustainable design guidelines to incorporate requirement for some sort of a safe room in buildings or houses without basements. We also are now utilizing or promoting through our Green Streets criteria buildings that are more resilient to high wind events. So it's really about how you fasten the home to the slab or the foundation, and also what types of materials and fasteners you're using with the roof. So it's definitely something that's on our minds, and we're trying to demonstrate through our disaster recovery housing projects. As far as here and creating the type of safe rooms, structures and spaces you're talking about, I think that's one of those things as the community and the county are working on their hazard mitigation plans, which get updated on a regular basis. Maybe in those plans they've already identified that as a risk, but if not, if they could identify that in those plans, it may help them to access some of the hazard mitigation grant funding available through Iowa Homeland Security Emergency Management, or through FEMA. Might be resources as well. And FEMA also has a couple of really good, useful publications out there on how to build those types of safe rooms or safe structures, and there's maybe half a dozen different types of methods that can be used, and they have all the specifications available out there.
I'll just share that having lived in Portland and waiting for the giant earthquake that has yet to come, I felt very prepared. We had done the fastener of our foundation. We had an earthquake kit, which has now turned into our tornado kit. In Dubuque, people joke that they're going to come to my house because no one else has a tornado preparedness kit. But so I personally think about it a lot. Also, we were camping at Lake McBride when the derecho hit, so we ran into the bathroom for our shelter during COVID. Our kids are like, but our masks, we're around strangers. And we said, okay, we're taking the most immediate threat right now. But it was really interesting to be in that disaster, sort of feeling very helpless in this bathroom. And so absolutely, yes, we want people to have a safe place to go to. And what the city of Dubuque has done, there are lots of basements there, but what we're considering doing is, as we're looking at neighborhoods that might need a resiliency hub or a place where you could go, at like a cooling center, heating center, warming center, as well as a place to be safe during a disaster or to have electricity with battery backup. As we incentivize folks to, or give money to nonprofits or churches or other buildings in the downtown area, we're asking them to be considering these things. There aren't a requirement at this time, but it's saying like, hey, if you're gonna use city money to do these building improvements, could you also serve as a warming center or serve as a place where people can go during a disaster? So it's not any sort of set program, but these are the things that we're considering as we continue to move forward and using that as an incentive, but also to make it a community amenity. And it's a place where people already are comfortable going. That's another key piece to it.
Yeah, I would just add that as we are really, sort of diving in now to our climate action planning, the consideration of resiliency certainly is front and center related to that. And I think, as has been mentioned, the reality of these catastrophic environmental challenges that are before us become more front and center every day. The derecho was considerable for our state, but we just see these events that happen, every few years now, happening on an ongoing basis. And I think that future is in front of us. And so, this is very important for us in our planning, but also I think it brings forward the importance that Jeff mentioned related to communication and really ensuring the thumb of all the planners, all the strategists that are looking at planning really is on the pulse of the concerns of the community and the needs of the community, and ensuring that infrastructure. And it being communication as to what the needs are, as well as what the possibilities can be, and really it being a community solution, and ensuring that there's just that ongoing sharing and consideration collectively as a community.
An anonymous attendee asked, there are many important things that need to be done in all communities. If you were to pick 3 projects to get started that would not only give the most climate protection impact, but would also build community momentum to keep doing more and more, what would you select?
So I'm going to start with one, and I think this one could be most impactful. We're looking for somebody to pilot this, so opportunities here. I would encourage you to all go Google, or however you search these days, for pay as you save, or PAYS. I think the PAYS approach to encouraging energy efficiency and energy conservation improvements in our homes and small businesses is the solution that a lot of us have been looking for out there. So a PAYS system is set up so that there's a local pool of funds. Typically it's through the utility. I don't think it's always through the utility though, who basically upfronts those costs. So they provide an assessment or audit service that goes into the building, identifies the energy savings opportunities that have a payback that's quicker than the life expectancy of whatever that improvement might be. And then they recapture that investment through the savings on your energy bill. So if they figure out we can save you $50 a month on your utility bill, they're going to capture 40 of that to pay back their investment into that energy efficiency improvement. But you right away as a homeowner or renter see $10 a month on average bill savings with no upfront costs. So you have no upfront costs, you're seeing an immediate savings, and you've got improved environmental quality in your home, and you've lowered your energy footprint. To me, it just seems like it's a win-win-win. It's been used in about 8 other states, 20 communities. I was just looking at this bottle here. bottled in the Ouachita Mountains. Well, Ouachita Rural Electric Cooperative in Arkansas is one of the first pilots of this, and it's had great success. So there are lots of them out there. They've been used by REC, rural electric cooperatives, by municipal utilities, and we're starting to see it move into the investor-owned utilities as well, including 2 of the investor-owned utilities, larger ones in Missouri. So I think the Office of Consumer Advocate had proposed it to Alliant a couple of years ago. Alliant wasn't interested or didn't go forward, at least at that point. But maybe it's time to revisit it because there's a lot more information out there now and success stories to share about pay-as-you-save.
I'll go with, I'm just going to do one because I'm one person and it already seems overwhelming. But I would say a complete streets concept. When I was holding community sessions, a lot of folks had difficulty with transportation in the city of Dubuque. We know it's a large emitter of greenhouse gases. We also have ground level ozone issues, and so we want to make sure that we're taking care of our air quality as well. And so to get to the 3 though, within complete streets concepts, the infrastructure, incentives, as well as education, I would say those are the 3 that I would start to tackle and likely see the biggest improvement and gains for our goals.
So this is such a great question, and so many different opportunities and so much effort to consider in approaching them. So in general, I think that it's so important to lay that framework. And so I just can't reiterate enough the importance of doing some benchmarking, as Josh mentioned, figuring out where are the biggest opportunities within your community so you know how best to effectively place that effort. And then putting together folks to do planning. You know, without a vision, you have a really impressive scatter plot, but it's not necessarily following a tangent line toward a shared vision. And I think that's so important as well. And then that continual consideration of engagement. How are you ensuring that you are getting that input really from all corners of your community, and that there is that opportunity to provide input, to provide perspective, to ask questions on a 24/7 basis, not necessarily requiring showing up at a certain meeting at a certain time on a certain day. So those are overarching, but I would say that, you know, some items that I think are particularly beneficial, if you get down to 3 maybe specific areas, definitely our consideration of energy. Always looking for new opportunities to transition away from fossil fuels, but an immediate impact we can all make every day on a daily basis is really challenging ourselves related to demand. And this is something that we don't just have to depend upon the community to set a standard, put a policy in place, get funding to do different projects. It's something we can all ask ourselves. And so because I'm working with students on a day-to-day basis and they're asking me, what can I do right now, as well as encouraging them to find their voices and to speak to those things that are meaningful for them, I always say you can make an immediate difference right now related to your decisions according to your daily habits and how you spend your money, when you raise your hand to volunteer, and just those decisions you make right at the point of consumption. So I would not underestimate that as well. Food is another big area. Food security is so considerable, and there's so much food waste on a day-to-day basis. And this is another opportunity we have to empower ourselves individually as we look further at planning those overarching community programs. And then finally, just getting involved, finding where your niche is, offering those opportunities for folks to get involved. And then as an individual in the community, finding that niche and being a part of the solution. There's so many ideas I am not in need of any more ideas as to what I can do on campus or in the community. Where the need is having that support, having those individuals that are excited to join in this effort.
Well, I'm happy to weigh in on that as well. I think I'm back. So I think the key is you want to pick the places where you're going to have the biggest impact and where you can set a vision for future action. And so I do think looking at the electricity and a clean energy standard is one of those pieces that will set a vision for a lot of the policies that need to be underneath. So you have a strong clean energy vision like a 24/7, 100%. If you're actually serious about implementing it, you're going to be looking at a lot of the other strategies in the coming years on how to get there, from distributed energy to what individual consumers can do from an energy efficiency perspective on the demand side. All of those are going to have to be part of meeting a strong clean energy standard. I think, again, building benchmarking and looking at how you get into energy efficiency from a building use, whether that be at the big buildings or down at the single family level, that is another key piece that any comprehensive plan is going to have. And to Jeff's point, PACE financing can be a solution under building energy use, just as demand response and other efficiency measures. And then tackling transportation is a big piece of that. And so what Gina was saying about a complete streets policy, that is going to be a major piece of any transportation plan, where you're actually looking at how you provide alternatives and you provide pedestrian-friendly, bike-friendly, transit-friendly options for people in your community. If you have a comprehensive transportation plan that addresses climate, you're going to be dealing with all of those strategies.
I'm Zach Ascar. I'm 16. First, I would like to say thank you for coming out. Thank you for having us. Thank you for everything you're doing for this world as well. It's like really helping, and I think we all can say we care so much that you're doing it. We just watched a video with Greta Thunberg at her talking at a press conference about climate change. She's a big face for climate change for teens. How do you feel about her and her ideas?
Greta fan here. She's very inspirational. I think for beyond teens, I feel inspired by her. I love that she continually holds adults accountable. And yeah, just she's a gem.
I would echo that. I think that the reminder that we are in a very urgent situation is vital, and she is so inspiring and such a beacon of the change that needs to happen in the world, and not just talking about that change, but really committing herself to being that change and being a part of that change, and reminding us all we have personal responsibilities to that legacy that we leave for future generations. And I just want to offer a thank you to you, Zach, because you are an inspiration to all of us. I think that I can echo my panelists on this, and we appreciate all the hard work that you and all your fellow students are doing as well. It is absolutely necessary and vital for the future.
I would echo the echo. I agree completely, and I appreciate the question, Zach, because you and all of us can be influential and inspirational just like Greta is, and I'm working to get there as well. And I just look at my town. I currently live in Johnston, and the person who's leading our efforts to try and get a climate action plan in place is a middle school young lady who got the conversation started. She's heading up the group and is trying to move us forward. So you could be that person here too.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all big fans and incredibly impressed. And I think the model is anyone can can make a difference if they use their voice and use their passion and engage. And really, this is about the future, and we need leaders in the next generation to be taking this up. One, you're very persuasive. We always, elected officials always talk about the future, hearing from the folks who are going to be the future and be responsible for solving these problems with us or dealing with our failure to solve them is a key piece of it. And so having voices and inspiring more to take action like that is a fantastic piece. And I think what you are doing, what the young woman in Johnston, what students all over are doing is critical to making this a key issue. And I think we've seen that impact. I think just in the last few years, climate has risen on the national agenda because voices of young people have been more active and have pushed and have effectively set the agenda. I mean, we wouldn't have been talking about climate in the way we are without those voices, whether it be the infrastructure bill at the national level and the reconciliation bill that are going to include pieces of climate. It's just a question of how much. That conversation was not happening a few years ago. And it's because more voices are at the table pushing for these solutions.
Hello, I am Dave Rishi, 11th grader from Maharishi School. I want to thank you guys for coming out and talking about us. My question was, how did COVID-19 affect the movements of, global warming? Yeah, thank you.
Well, I would say, COVID hits that social sustainability consideration, and maintaining, health and well-being of our populations is crucial in order that we can keep making sustainability efforts and moving forward. So with that in mind, health and safety absolutely had to come first at the university and at the city. I wouldn't say that we lost momentum. I would just say that it delayed some of the action items a bit and caused us to have to rethink and have to put in some different components, really to put health and safety first. I would say, from a university standpoint, we didn't have all of our 30,000+ students on campus. So from a natural resource perspective, we looked pretty good. We had a huge reduction in water. In fact, we had to actually ask some of our staff that were on campus throughout the entirety of the pandemic to run some water through pipes, just to make sure that processors were functioning and we weren't going to have all these deferred maintenance pieces to deal with. Where I think we took an extreme hit, and it was really hard to move through it, was waste. Everything for considerations of COVID precautions had to go to disposables. We really had no other option. We had to keep everyone safe. The students that were on campus, we couldn't gather in common dining areas. We couldn't use those reusables. We had to go to disposables. And so this has been, this has been really tough. That this year we're still very much in the pandemic journey, and so we are making those incremental steps back as we are able. One thing that I would mention is we did put together a unique opportunity on campus to consider the fact that while COVID did a lot to separate us and to challenge how we were considering our day-to-day actions and require new components that we weren't even realizing that would need to be a part of our overarching strategies, primarily plexiglass, all the plexiglass that has come onto campus. And as we are looking toward when our journey no longer necessarily requires so much of the plexiglass, suddenly we had a bit of a panic attack saying, what in the world are we going to do with all this plexiglass when people decide they no longer need it? And so that actually offered a unique opportunity for us to remotely connect with an industrial design class that's called Design for Sustainability. And what students worked on, although virtually, they worked collaboratively on coming up with different options, different reuse options for plexiglass, so that it wasn't becoming a waste item, it was becoming something that was beneficial. It was becoming something that, instead of just being a means of separation, actually could bring us together for useful benefit. There were incredible ideas, and I'm really excited that we were able to present the students' great work and visions and creativity toward looking at a really difficult situation and yet finding a great achievement to talk about at the end of it all at a national conference in a couple of weeks.
Mary covered a lot, but I was just going to add one thing that my office did was, as a rapid response, was we formed a teen resiliency corps. And so I partnered with the Multicultural Family Center located in Dubuque. Their teens were going to school virtually. They were really in need and having some social isolation issues. And so we created this group of young people to go door to door in their neighborhoods and check on their neighbors and just say, hey, how's it going? Can we link you to any services? Are you food insecure? Do you need us to do an energy audit? Or do you want us to send someone over to do an energy audit? Can we offer you an energy saver kit to help reduce your energy burden? And the results were hard to measure, but just incredible. Like, one story that always sticks with me is a young woman has lived in her neighborhood for years, knew maybe one of her neighbors. She got to know a lot of her neighbors. One is an elderly woman who said, well, I just feel so lonely and I haven't seen my grandchildren and I just want to see them. And Shay was like, well, are you using an iPhone? You can FaceTime them. And she was like, oh, they've said that, but I don't know how to do that. And so she took this woman through and showed her how to use her iPhone to FaceTime her grandchildren and connected her. And like that, while it's hard to measure and say this was this produced X, was really impactful, both for Shay, the young woman who showed her and said like, oh wow, like I helped this person, as well as this woman and her grandchildren. And so the Teen Resiliency Corps has now continued. We found additional funding. We were paying the teens to do it, and a lot of them were then helping out with groceries or what. One kid, Day said like, I got to take my brother shopping for new school clothes. It was awesome. So it was really empowering for the teens as well. And they're now they're looking at energy efficiency in our rental stock. So they have a five category scorecard. And so they're just helping us collect data in their neighborhood, so we have a better idea of what we're dealing with our old housing stock in Dubuque. And we want to keep doing it and keep giving them projects. And that was one thing that came out of COVID that probably wouldn't have happened otherwise. And then I just think there is a lot of divisiveness, but I also think there was this great, we're all in this community response. And I think that's how we're going to tackle climate change as well. We have to. And so sort of having that feeling and trying to capture it in my work is how I'm moving forward and using that COVID impact for good.
I think it's a really interesting question because I think we're still learning the answer on the impact. I mean, there were some very immediate impacts that changed where our emissions were coming from. And in some cases temporarily, in some it might be longer term, and it's definitely impacted some of the solutions, and it could if we don't address it. So for example, when everyone was at home, transportation emissions went down significantly for a period of time. And there's a question about whether people will work remote, whether they'll work remote part-time going forward, and what is that going to do to commutes and vehicle trips, and is that something that helps reduce transportation emissions in and of itself if we change where people work and how people work? and we're gonna see what happens with that. But that's also something that we would want to plan for from a transportation solution perspective in any comprehensive climate plan. At the same time, taking precautions have impacts. There was talk about the waste piece, but another piece is what's happened to transit, because a lot of transit systems, including Des Moines, the ridership has gone down. Some of it because people didn't feel it was as safe to be on a bus with 15, 20 other people. Some of it because people's commuting changed when they were working from home. And that has a very immediate impact on those systems. And if there hadn't been federal relief for transit agencies, those solutions could disappear because those systems would have so much funding trouble. And if this doesn't come back, there could be issues that communities have to navigate that will not just impact climate solutions, but also impact people's ability to access their community, impact equity in all sorts of ways. So in that regard, it's really interesting and still emerging. And then I think there's a whole another set of conversations that you could have about how people deal with science and evidence-based practices and interacting and putting the collective good front and center. And I think there are all sorts of lessons from COVID there, but we could talk all day about that, and it's philosophical and theoretical, but something that we probably need to grapple with in the long term as well.
A couple of things that come to mind for me is, one, I mentioned our efforts to reinvigorate the West Union effort there and to fully leverage their assets downtown. Well, a lot of that was based on community outreach, and that really impacted the strategies that were available, and it's slowed down that project significantly in getting that community outreach to take place. The same thing in Southwest Iowa, we're working on disaster recovery. We had some funding through the Federal Economic Development Administration to assist Mills and Fremont counties, at least parts of them, with some land use planning to the future, thinking about resiliency and flood mitigation. And those outreach efforts too were challenged by not having that face-to-face, large community gatherings that we had initially envisioned in that process, and it slowed that process down. Probably more impactful, though, is for my colleagues in the Iowa Downtown Resource Center that work with a lot of Main Street communities and smaller communities like Fairfield and those downtown businesses, and how do we help them pivot quickly to an online type of retail or food delivery type of situation. And then for many of my colleagues, for them, it was a pivot to how do we help those who are challenged in meeting their rent or their utility payments, and quickly standing up utility and rent assistance programs, and being in the terrible position of hearing some of those stories and the desperate situations people were in, but thankfully being able to help many of them. And but I think all of those experiences now are going to influence our programs going forth, and just what that's going to look like Josh said, I don't think we know completely yet, but definitely has us, I think, even more focused on energy and housing issues.
Thank you so much.
We got one more question.
All right, it is now time to wrap up the panel discussion and questions. Thanks to our audience for your interest, and to the panelists for sharing their wisdom and experience. On behalf of my fellow students on the stage and in the audience, thanks to all of you for taking the time to plan a future that works for everyone, and not just letting our future happen. I will now hand it over to Bob for closing remarks.
Well, thank you, Gatika, and all of our brilliant students on the stage and in the audience and on Zoom. So again, I want to thank the Southeast Iowa Sierra Club for your 9 months of planning, fundraising, and organizing that went into this event. Thanks to the And thanks to my colleagues at the Sustainable Living Coalition for your partnership, and thanks to all the co-sponsors of this event, along with our mayor, Connie Boyer. And I have to say, it's really wonderful getting back in the saddle with Connie in the sustainability world. It goes without saying that it is those who come before us that pave the way for us to take the risk of trying something new for our community. To all those communities in Iowa, in the United States, and around the world that have already built a sustainable and resilient community model, thank you for showing us the way. We no longer need to sit on the sidelines and imagine, but rather build our own model for the future of Fairfield. And we ask all of you in this room and on Zoom to join us in gathering the ideas from what we've learned today from the communities around Iowa and reimagine a future that works for everyone in our own community. And as a final note, with this joint effort and the support of so many individuals and entities in our community, we are just shy of raising enough funds to support a sustainability coordinator for the next 3 years. We expect in the next month to have raised all the needed funds, and with that we will be off and running, building the next Go Green plan to see us through the coming decade. Thank you all for being part of our process. And as you leave this room, we'd like to ask you to envision a vibrant, sustainable, and resilient Fairfield, or whatever community you may have come from. Now let's get to work and make it a reality. Thank you.